Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Clannon. My guest today is Pat Dillon of Dillon Law PC. A little about Pat before we get started. Pat is a lawyer to support his farming habit in Northeast Iowa for nearly 20 years. Pat enjoys working with rural clients, which include farmers, ag businesses, and small business owners. He serves as a municipal attorney for several small Northeast Iowa towns. He handles real estate, bankruptcy, tax preparation, estate planning, probate, and business transition planning for his clients. He is a past president and board member of the American Agricultural Law Association and a section chair for the Iowa State Bar Ag Law section. Pat has published a book, Field Manual, Iowa's Farmers Guide to Legal Issues. Prior to the practicing law, he served as an active duty Army logistics officer after attending Iowa State University, where he studied farm operation. Pat has offices in Sumner, West Union, and Volga City, all of which are in Iowa. So Pat, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
How are you doing today?
Doing good, thank you.
Great. Well, again, just want to thank you for your past service of your active duty.
I appreciate it. Taxpayers paid me well. It was fine.
So let's just go through a couple of things. I just want to throw out some questions and just get your thoughts, and just for our listeners to learn a little about you and your practice and how you work with clients. So first of all, why did you get into law?
Well, I originally thought that I wanted to get back to Northeast Iowa to raise kids, but I did not want to have discussions about, well, let's not go buy groceries because I haven't sold cattle yet. And I didn't want the cyclic nature of farming, while I enjoy it, I didn't want that to drive other opportunities or things we wanted to do or not do. I do find it challenging to fix problems for people and try to find answers. And that's, I like those kind of challenges, and law provides me the opportunity to do that in rural Iowa.
Right. And, some of our listeners may not know, but, it is not cheap to be a farmer. Right.
Yeah.
So like you said, you had to be a lawyer to be able to fund your farming habit.
Right. True farmers, they bury their money in the ground every year. Like right now, fertilizer, chemical, seed, all that stuff is in the ground, and you got to wait on it to come back out and harvest, come this fall. So the lawyering allows me a steady source of income, and so I can do and pursue what I want to. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, as farmers, right, your money is tied up into the land or the business.
Absolutely.
Farmers put their money back into it.
Absolutely, it's a capital intense operation, no matter which avenue of farming you're in.
Right. So as far as I know, in your bio you do a lot of things, but let's just focus on the estate planning, which goes into like probate and other family issues in that. But
Sure.
tell us why you kind of went into the estate planning, because that seems to be a big part of your business.
So that's usually the biggest problem people have, right? Is where my stuff goes, who gets it, how do they get it, and is what I'm doing the right thing to do from a tax perspective, from an equities position, from a business survivability position. All those things you kind of have to look at and be able to craft a document that once you die, you don't get to change it again. So it's important that you have someone who can do those things and then also understands where you're coming from. Being able to speak farmer is an important thing, because although the agronomists who are listening to this will cringe when I say this, dirt is different. It just flows better. Soil's what we grow stuff in. Dirt's what's behind your ear. But dirt is different to people, right? No one's ever come to me and said, I need to save the family shoe factory or the chemical plant, right? They don't do that, but they do about farms.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So, who is your ideal client?
So we take quite a few different types of clients, and I don't want to turn anybody off from saying I don't think that guy wants to help me. But ideally, we want to work with a family farm that is in transition and wants to ensure success of the following generation. Now that might be the elders are in their 60s and the kids are coming back off the college tour, right? And they need to figure out how to show the old man, the old lady, they know what they're doing. Or it might be the thing where you've got a child that maybe is coming back in their 40s, and because mom and dad need the help, and the farm's never been big enough for more than one income, but it's clear that we need to do something different because mom and dad aren't going to provide the labor anymore. So those are the kind of clients we like working with to find a way to successfully meet multiple people's goals. And a lot of times those goals are keeping the farm going, keeping the farm in the family name, avoiding taxes is always a big one to everybody. Those type of things.
Now kind of talk about like, what are some types of tools that you use with estate planning with clients?
So we use a variety of techniques. What we like to look at is doing like a wargaming, a little bit of coming from the Army background, but saying, okay, what happens when dad dies? What happens when mom dies? What does this look like if Junior suddenly, decides to go sell it all and live in the Key West, right? And he leaves the operation or she leaves the operation. Having that then sparks conversations about, wow, we'd have to do things differently. And then, okay, can we do some of those things now, or do we need to make some adjustments in how we do stuff? Are we overly reliant on one person? There's that willing suspension of disbelief that you're ever going to die that goes along when you're farm operators, and it's 100% chance. Tell everybody that comes in the conference room, 100% chance everybody in this room is going to die.
Right.
No matter when. So,
do you have a kind of like, the military background? Do you have a war story with a family who didn't have the right planning?
So that happens a lot. And the basics is, I'll just leave everything equally and we'll let the kids figure it out. Right. That is the simplest, most scary story, because there's a lot of lawyers that hear that and just twitch because they know. And that doesn't matter if it's farming or if it's whatever, there's going to be some bloodletting. There's going to be everybody gets along until mom and dad dies. And then we remember who got a swirly and who didn't get to go to prom and all that kind of stuff. But more particularly and more nuanced, there's a farm family that engaged a lawyer, developed a limited farm partnership, and acquired a lot of property. And there were a lot of kids. And their goal was they'll support the farming kids. They'll make sure this land that they acquire is available for the farming kids. But then when the non-farming kids, at some point when the farming kids are done, we'll distribute it all, and it'll all work out. Well, the document appears to be a little inartfully drafted, and while there's still a couple that want to farm, there's now enough political on the other side that they're forcing the distribution of that partnership. And so you've got people in their late 50s, early 60s that are heavily invested in equipment, and they do have some of their own ground, but they're going to lose access to some of the ground that they've built their entire operation around because mom and dad's lawyer didn't think about, like, how does this end? One of the things we try to do, we try to get people to do buy-sell agreements when they form a company, because that's when everybody's getting along, right? That's the time to discuss how do we value this company, not when you're ticked off that somebody did this and somebody's spouse did that and somebody's kid didn't do this, and that's awful difficult at that point.
Yeah. As far as working with a family that you put a plan together and that you have a success story.
Yeah, we do have those too. Those don't get quite as much play, at the watering holes with the lawyers, but yeah, worked with a family, put some stuff with some buy-sell agreements and some rights of rental for the on-farm heirs to be able to get access to that ground without having to own it or buy it from their siblings. Gave the siblings the ability to not have to have conversations with their brothers and sisters at family Thanksgiving, like, well, what's rent going to be? Past mashed potatoes, right? That's not great. In particular, there was one family we did this for, and then we bring all the kids in and we kind of walk them through things. And the kids like, well, you missed me. I didn't hear you say that my ground also has a right of first refusal for rent and for sale on it. And the dad's like, no, we excluded you because we know that at one time you wanted to farm, and we want to give you that opportunity without you feeling like you can't do that because your younger siblings gets to rent it first. And the older sibling said, hey, I'm past that. I want the same relationship that my sisters get with my brother. I don't want to argue about rent, and I don't intend to farm. And I want to see him rent it from me, and I want to hold it as an asset. Well, not only does that help relieve potential stress, but then also it allows that younger sibling right then to know, okay, if mom and dad have all these tied up with these rights to rent, that leaves my war chest available to go buy the neighbor's farm and not have to. And that's what's happened here. Mom and dad have died, they moved on, and the family is still growing and acquiring land instead of paying lawyers, which is great. So
What are some tools that you put in place where or what the family can do so they don't have these issues at the first death or the second death of the parent?
so again, we come down to we want to make sure that we've got things in position so people can fund, right? They want to make sure it's realistic, right? It's one thing to say on-farm heir, she gets to buy all the equipment at 70% of the value, but if she didn't have any money, right, that's no good, right?
Right.
And so we've got to make sure that we've got the tools, whether it's you know, evaluation or a period to buy over time, right? Because you control about 3 P's, right? You control the priority, who gets to buy, and then the next one is pricing, and then the next one is payment, right? And so you can use
Right.
those 3 levers: who gets to buy, how we determine price, and how long do they have to pay for it. Like, those are great tools to help transition people in individual situations. A 100-acre farmer who raises goats and sells artisanal cheese at 2 farm markets a year is entirely different than a 1,500 head farrow to finish operation for hogs. Different cash flow, different needs.
Sure.
So that's the kind of things we try to look at, whether it's buy-sell agreements, whether it's first rights of refusal. Sometimes we hold things in different vehicles like LLCs in order to provide people a seat at the table and some of those type activities.
Right, definitely. Because it's easier for them, meaning the parents or whoever owns a farm, to make these decisions so they can alleviate a lot of these issues in the end.
Right. Yeah, I think I might have said it earlier, but everybody gets along until mom and dad dies, and then that's when the bloodletting seems to come out even more. And sometimes you hear things like, well, mom and dad would never allow this, so I'm going to do this, even though it doesn't rationally make sense. Well, if it's clear what mom and dad wanted, then we don't have.
Right.
I remember one will I did not draft, but I probated it, where the drafting attorney had put a provision in there and said, I'm specifically saying to you, my daughters, that I have purposely devalued the property because I want your brother to succeed. And that's why it's lower price. And I don't, essentially saying, don't challenge it, and understand my intent has always been that I want this farm to continue. And even if that means you guys got less, I know I'm doing that.
Mhm.
And I read that to them one time when they got all excited about something, and that shut her down pretty quickly. So
What's the best advice that you've ever received?
So this is gonna sound harsh. It was the old magistrate in Clayton County. It was my first year practicing law by myself, and he said, "Hey, on the 23rd of December, if someone comes dragging into your office wearing shorts and flip flops and a t-shirt, which is not wise in Iowa at that time of year, and they're bruised and they look malnourished and they got a skinny kid with them, and they say, help, I've got a legal issue and I need you to take action on it right now. and I guarantee you I don't have any money, but I'll figure out how to pay you someday, and it'll work out. And he said, if that person doesn't have a brother, an uncle, an aunt, a sister, a mom, a dad, priest, pastor, a lover, or an ex-lover that cares enough to pay your initial retainer, then you probably shouldn't. So as far as the practice of law,
Oh my gosh.
now I like to help people, and do I pay the full, do I make people pay the full freight all the time? No, right? And I make it to make that. But his point was well taken, that if nobody else wants to invest in it, then you need to be aware of what you're doing if you're investing your time and effort into it. So
Right, right. What's your biggest challenge?
so my biggest challenge is in estate planning, especially, is overcoming the concerns of the depression era clients who are worried that something else is going to happen, so they need to maintain the asset because something else might happen, and their 17 jars of peanut butter they have stoked in their basement are not enough. So they're slowly moving off the playing field here. But the other thing is getting over this idea that everybody has to be treated exactly the same. Sometimes because they're the oldest, they get this or they get that. Those kind of baked in problems are hard to get over. Fair is what happens the third week of August in Des Moines, as far as I'm concerned. You treat people equitably. Oftentimes I get people off that mindset where I'll look at them and say, well, you never bought your son a prom dress, right? Because he didn't need one, right? And that you got him what he needed as a kid. And this is the same thing. We need to get people the things they need. It's okay to, if you've got a child that's fabulously wealthy and lives in Oregon and works for, a big tech company, it's okay to say, you know what, they probably don't need the 10-acre patch of, it might as well just not, So getting that point where they can feel comfortable to say, I don't have to buy matching sweaters for everybody.
Right,
That's tough.
right. Well, just like as we talked before, farmers, there's always going to be a kid usually that wants the farm or who is working the farm.
Right.
And then you have two other siblings they don't want the farm, right?
Yeah. And devising a way that recognizes that protection of the equity that on-farm error made is important. And then acknowledging that, yeah, okay, he not only he or she stay there and do the work, but also forewent other opportunities, whether that's vacation, education, or what have you. And then the kids that left, they seem to sometimes have amnesia about who paid for college and who gave them the down payment money for that first house in Tennessee. Those type of things.
Mhm.
Got to treat people where they need to be treated, and there's a business relationship that develops between generations that if you're not in the business, like it's hard to. You're like, well, this farm is just the way I left it when I graduated high school. No, it's not. We took a risk and we added a new building, and your sister was instrumental in making sure that we got access to a new market. And without her hard work and dedication to schlep over to the rural farmers market on every Monday and sell our freezer beef, we wouldn't be where we're at, right? And so understanding that the dynamic has changed since people left, that's important.
Right. What do you what do you wish you knew when you started that you know now?
Well, I think first is nursing homes and how much they're going to cost. That is a critical thing as we plan. They were $3,000 a month when I started, and now they're like, we use the $9,000 figure. I also wish I knew estate tax wouldn't be such a big deal. It seems to just keep raising it, and I do have some clients that's still an issue for, but not a lot. I saw an old joke one time about, as a kid, I thought quicksand would be a bigger part of my life as an adult. But when I went to law school, I really thought that the federal estate tax was going to be a big thing. And even with land prices being as high as they are, there's a section that we deal with that has that issue, but not as many people as it was when I started. It was the state tax had just gone to $1 million per person, and now it's 12.9, whatever. So
Right. So as far as your schooling, because you went to Iowa State and you got your farm operations degree, how has that helped you in your practice?
So I can understand the language of the industry that my clients work in without them having to explain things to me and spend that time kind of getting me educated. Once when I was early on, a guy wanted to switch his lawsuit midstream to me. Law school teaches you that's a bad idea because you're the next guy to get fired. And so I was just kind of, I said, well, I'm not really sure I want to do that. What's the problem? And he said, it's a crop share lease. It's about, we're fighting about who has to pay for what. And my lawyers, when I got to the cost for Roundup, he's like, Roundup, I didn't know there were any horses involved. And he didn't have to explain it to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's chemical for, oh man. So being able to speak that language, understand that what conservation reserve program payments are, the rules that are associated with them with the government, the concern about crop insurance, why it's important to get tile maps, those kind of things help me. And then I also know the production cycles too. Like I had a distressed farmer, special asset manager flew up from St. Louis, and he's like, I do this all the time. I just got done doing this for a dress company. You just need to start selling some of your product earlier than you normally do. We'll cash flow you out of this. And he's like, take those 750-pound steers of yours and just start selling a couple of those every month. And I explained to him that, with the incomplete, non-finished beef is worth way less than a finished one. And you're actually going to get docked and, rail speed and all the things that go along with production agriculture that are just baked in. It made my client feel a lot better that he didn't have to stop and explain it to me on why that'd be a bad idea, right? I was just able to, no, that's not. And so those kind of things. And Farm Op at Iowa State is a broad range. Man, I think I got a year's worth of free electives. I took classes from forest fires to all sorts of things. And so it gave me a broad breadth of things to know and kind of satisfy some curiosities with, and that's helpful.
What is it that makes you, Pat, unique in your law firm unique?
So I think in Northeast Iowa, there's not a lot of folks who are able to speak farmer, and there are other people, there are other lawyers. When we've got this group of us, the American Agricultural Law Association, which is professors and practitioners and policy people. But even then, the actual practicing lawyers out here in the pointy end of the spear only make up about a third of that group. And there's a lot of rural Iowa lawyers who do good things. But as far as what makes us unique is our ability to say we're where you're at. We're literally in the line with you to go dump corn. I've had people come up and ask me questions while we're in the grain line waiting. They see me out in the community at the events, farm auctions. They've been the places they go. I go the places they go. So I think that adds familiarity and a level of trust. Lawyering is a very personal business. And people drive by other lawyers' offices to get to mine, and I'm sure that other people drive by mine to get to their lawyers because of the relationships and what they want. I think what I take pride in is getting people to the right point. I don't know how to do patent law. Don't want to know, but I'll get you to somebody. I don't do car accidents and I don't do medical malpractice, but I got a guy. I got a guy that'll help and we'll take care of things.
Right. You're the expert in your area.
Right.
And then you have other experts in their areas that you can share. Is there anything else that you would like our listeners to know about you, or anything that you want to share?
I think not necessarily about me, but about just rural lawyers in general. We are just as competent. We are just as capable as any lawyer in a big market. We have access to all the same books they do because they're on electronic digits. We just got to pay the subscription like everybody else. You can find the lawyer that meets your needs. And sometimes I think people get a little wrapped up about location, like, oh, well, they practice in rural Iowa. They must only do, these little things, or they wouldn't understand this. So I'm going to have to travel to the land of the concrete and find a lawyer in a big town. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that rural lawyers, despite the fact there's not that many of us left, we're kind of thinning out, do a good job and provide a good service to people.
How do our listeners find you? Are you on social media? Your website?
Yep, the website is dillonlawpc.com. You'll see tractors on it. That's how you know you're at the right Dillon Law. There's other Dillon Laws out there. But I'm also on Twitter at Dillon Law. Don't necessarily post a lot, follow a lot of people on there. It's interesting as a
Sure.
platform. And we've got a Facebook page like the rest of the known world apparently does. But always happy to talk with folks about an issue that's come up or get them in the right direction. Like I said, with that Ag Law Association that I'm in, I've got friends and contacts throughout the United States, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. This has been Michael Clan for the Legacy Leaders Podcast. My guest today has been Pat Dillon with Dillon Law PC. If you'd like more information or learn about Pat Dillon, visit dillonlawpc.com. Pat, thanks again so much for being our guest today on the Legacy Leaders Podcast.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.